Hello, everybody. So as you can see with the slide here, we're going to do 5 ways to beat creative blocks. So we'll have 5 different activities for you throughout these 45 minutes. And my name is Mike Campbell. I am one of the assistants in the Center for Creativity.
And my name is Jasmine. I'm also an assistant with the Center for Creativity.
All right, so we'll have a couple minutes here before we start with the activities. So while we're talking, if you need to gather any of these supplies, what you'll need is a notebook or some paper, pen or pencil, a mirror, a drawing or writing surface, so just any desk that you're on, your phone or your laptop, and your favorite book.
So everyone may be more familiar with the term writer's block. It was a term that was really popular in like 90s to early 2000s media. These are barriers to inspiration that can be described as something that stops your ability to create. These could be more popular with people in creative professions like writers, musicians, performers, or artists, but it is by no means exclusive to people who work in the creative professions. So it could be you have creative block with like doing a PowerPoint presentation or with writing some sort of biographical piece. No matter what sort of discipline you come from, everyone is susceptible to creative blocks from time to time. These are also not specific to a certain period of time. So some creative blocks can last for days, weeks, months, years even. And so it's really important for us to find ways and strategies to help us break through these creative blocks whenever we encounter them, hopefully to keep them from lasting too long.
So there are 3 common types of creative block that we'll be helping you deal with today, hopefully. The first one is your inner critic. This is the voice that's telling you that the ideas you're having aren't good enough. So you need to get that idea out of there because it's not going to work with what you're doing. This is a form of self-censorship, and it paralyzes us and takes us away from some of what could have been our best ideas if we let it. The next one's fear of failure. So this creative block is kind of related to our inner critic. We want to get things right as soon as we start doing them from the get-go. We want to get them right the first time because we don't want to have to redo something, especially in the work environment. So if we're doing some sort of problem solving, we probably don't want to have to revisit it several times. So fear of failure can be very innate in the work environment. And this can be one of the roots of our inner critic because we're trying to censor ourselves so we have that perfectionistic streak the first time around. But that is how we learn, is by failing. So whenever you see something that is an innovation or a creative piece, that often comes from a very long process of failure and learning from that failure. And I've been drawing since I was 5. So of course my 5-year-old drawings were not great, and I learned how to do all of the things that I do through trial and error, even up into undergrad. In drawing classes, I didn't learn how to shade just from magic. It was through a lot of pain and process. And that goes with what you're doing in your work environment too. If you're trying to problem solve, you probably are going to have to come up with an idea, fix it, make it better, and continue to improve. So very much not just creative arts that go through that process. And the last one is lack of motivation. So there can be many reasons for lack of motivation. You can be overwhelmed, unhappy, or you don't know how to work through a project. Of course, there can be other personal reasons as well, but we're going to try and deal with the creative ones today. It could be your self-censorship that is causing this lack of motivation as well. If you're censoring all of your great ideas, then you just don't want to work on a project because you're telling yourself, you're talking yourself out of it a lot. Working out your creative muscle can be a way to overcome some of this lack of motivation. So the goals for these 5 activities are for you to fight the urge to self-censor and overthink. If you catch yourself falling for any of these creative blocks, allow yourself the freedom to keep moving forward and try and push these aside and let your pencil or your thoughts move freely.
Yep, so like Mike was just saying, we're going to be doing 5 different creative exercises that are supposed to help you, one, fight that self-censorship that Mike was going through. Also just to kind of help you have fun with the creative process. So these are not by any means serious activities. We are really trying to err on the side of fun with these. So if you find yourself struggling with any of these, like Mike said, just give yourself a moment to sort of ground yourself back into the activity and try to focus more on the process than the end result, which is kind of one of our big things at the center in general, is the process sometimes is more entertaining than the end result. So we're actually going to go and get started with our first activity here.
Let the music move you is the name of the activity. For this opening activity, I want you to draw what you'll be listening to. And the idea is don't overthink it. Let your pencil move with the song. You can use squiggles that go with the beat of the music, use colors, shapes, or words that remind you of the song, or even objects related to what's being sung. The point is to not spend a lot of time thinking about what you're feeling or what you're going to draw. You don't need to be caught up in being perfect with this. This is the opening activity, so the idea is just to really let yourself flow with the music. And if your squiggles seem completely unrelated to the music, that's fine too. Just let yourself feel what you're drawing. All right, so hopefully you let some ideas flow a bit there. This can be hard to do the first time around, so again, don't think anything bad of yourself if you were unable to come up with ideas. Hopefully through the next couple of activities, you'll be able to let yourself flow a little more freely with each successive activity. I've been doodling since I was in middle school because it helped me retain information, so this can be something you do at meetings. You might do it when you're on phone calls often, just find yourself doodling with your pencil. You can turn that into part of the conversation or part of what you're listening to. It can be a visual representation of your notes.
I don't know about the rest of you, but obviously with presenting, I had a little bit of nerves going into this, and that activity just really mellowed me out. I hope for everyone else that had a similar effect. So this next activity is actually something that I first came in contact with at the Children's Museum over on the north side. I'm not sure if they are still allowing people in at the current moment, but whenever you are able to return there, I suggest giving this a shot there as well. They had this really cool activity, I think in like the older children's section, called reflection sketches. For this activity, you would need some sort of reflective surface. I actually have like a wall mirror that I'm using, but I believe you are able to use your camera in Zoom. So if you are using a laptop, you can just angle it down and then have it on your piece of paper like so. You should also be able to use this with your phone, but it might be a little bit more difficult. So for this activity, you're going to take your paper in front of your reflective surface. And the challenging part, you're going to try to draw an image only using the mirror as a guide. So with this, it's kind of like Scout's honor, don't look at your paper whenever you're drawing. The really fun part about this activity is that it's kind of challenging your perception of things. For me, I know whenever I'm dealing with creative blocks, specifically around drawing or doing art, sometimes getting out of my comfort zone while still doing something that's relatively familiar is helpful. So this one for me is like really fun. For this, you want to start off pretty simple. We have here are like drawing a flower or a smiley face. As you'll notice, it's a little bit difficult getting started with this. I thought it was going to be a lot simpler whenever I first encountered this, but it actually is pretty difficult. If you find yourself really comfortable with this activity, I would say from there, try something more difficult, like maybe something like a car, a face, anything that sort of comes to mind. I'm just going to show you my attempts. They weren't awful. My sketch of my cat could have been a lot better. While it might not be an activity that you can really replicate in the workplace, it's kind of more of a symbolic activity. For a lot of the times whenever we interact with creative blocks, sometimes the solution can just be thinking about your challenge in a different way. For me, if I'm having a lot of trouble whenever it comes to something like painting, which is my main form of creativity, sometimes I will just sort of switch gears and do something that's a little bit different, like either just sketching or working on poetry or just working on something else that still gets my creative brain thinking, but in a way that's not necessarily the exact same way that I've been creating that's been causing the creative block. It's kind of just like a message that you can kind of take with you going forward.
So now we're going to do a bit of mind mapping. A lot of people probably have not done this since they were in school in some way. So we're going to get a little bit introspective with you all here. So mind mapping is a collection of thoughts. It's meant to be nonlinear. The idea being that our thoughts often come out in a nonlinear fashion. So as we are brainstorming or thinking through a problem, Things may jump to us and connect with each other in ways we weren't expecting in our head. Although the example here is very much the typical lines connecting to bubbles mind map, I want you to think of this as something that you can be creative with if you would like. So if you're a doodler, you can have your ideas come out as sketches. You can use words or symbols in combination with those sketches. Anything, as long as you understand what you're putting down so you can refer to it later. You don't have to use circles. You can do different types of bubbles. You can do squares. You can do squiggles. Anything that both visually draws you to an idea if you want to focus on it. I use color coordinating for the mind map in the example. If you just want to get the ideas down, you can always come back to this later and do some of the details. So I did all of the colored circling later to sort of map out where I thought the ideas separated or connected. In the middle of your page, I want you to start with an idea that you've been really stuck with. So it can be a creative idea, something that has been a problem or that you want to problem solve for, whatever that is, work or not related. Put it down in the middle of your page. And this will be the focus of your ideas. As you go from that middle, you should put down anything that comes to mind related to that subject. It can be the good, the bad, the nonsensical, as long as you are not letting yourself, again, censor what you're putting down. One of the most important things here is you need to write down absolutely everything when it comes to mind mapping. So not only can you come back and fine tune where things connect together, but also you're going to be using this as something that you can reflect on, see what connects, see what doesn't connect, see how you can use these ideas to come up with new challenges or solutions to a problem. And then if you run out of space on a page, that's fine. You can always connect to another page. You can always redo that mind map smaller so you have room to spread out, as long as it's in some way that makes sense to you to revisit later. So if you didn't get super far, that's completely fine. I just have about, I wrote pretty large, but it's about a half a page.
Yeah, I realized when I was doing it, I probably should have gone with a full page than a half page because I very quickly ran out of room.
But again, you can revisit this if you found yourself actually getting somewhere with this.
Right, and then this next activity is read, use, recycle. So this is where that book is going to come in handy. If you don't have a book, we have some book title examples here on screen that you can use. With your book, you would go through and find like multiple different quotes. So this could be either your favorite quotes from the book, or you can kind of just like randomly open to a different page, kind of put your finger on a line and then use that as well. And you want to try to rearrange these quotes into a new poem. So for this activity, using the picture on the side, you can also just use the book titles. Or if you have like, your favorite books or like your favorite movie titles, just anything that will help you to set the foundations for like a new written work. Let's see, I think in mine, I used 4 book titles that I could see. So the 4 book titles I used were In Search of Respect here on the bottom. And then on the top, it was A New World. I couldn't see the full title because my thing up at the top is blocking it, but I could see New World, Generation on a Tightrope, and then Opting Out. And the poem I came up with was In Search of Respect or Perhaps Something New. I'm peering into an abyss, fearing perhaps what a world looks like when I leave behind all I ever knew. On the tightrope, it feels like generating a new future is a decision either to leap or to fall. But if I opt out, I'd never know it all. So what I really like about this activity is that for a lot of us, we feel like we have to generate new ideas on the spot, which kind of gets into that fear of failure, where I've found some easy solutions and strategies to break through creative block comes from just leaning on ideas that already exist. We don't always have to come up with things that are completely brand new and completely, out of our own brains, as we ourselves don't exist in a vacuum. And so it can be a good idea to kind of take in the world around you, see what is already existing that you can find inspiration from. And that can kind of take the pressure off of your shoulders to think like, I have to think of something right here, right now that is fresh, brand new, So yeah, with that, we'll go into the next slide here. So yeah, our last activity is word tunes. This is an activity that kind of combines some of our sort of literary and like visual art activities that we had earlier. So this is something that you can continue working on after this is over, and you can make these as either simple or as detailed as you like. And so basically what you're doing is you're going to pick a word. So this word we suggest should be probably a little bit on the shorter side. So between like 3 to 5 letters just to get started. And what you're going to do is once you've picked your word, you're going to try to draw something around it. So as you see in this video, this person picked the word pizza. And what they end up drawing is like a person taking a bite out of the pizza. And then up here is a sketch that Mike did. I'm taking the word fire, and then drawing this figure, this cartoon around it with a torch in its hand. And so if you want to pick like a very simple word, I'm gonna try to relate it. Everything outside is like covered in snow right now, so I'm apt to do winter themed words. At least that's what I'm gonna probably try to go with if you need help with inspiration. Just anything that's gonna be something that's really fun to draw around. Also, don't feel the need to make it like exact to the word that you wrote. So you can think about it in a couple of different interpretations. So like the sketch that Mike did, it wasn't necessarily just a ball of fire, like he created something else on top of it. Don't feel the need to be restricted by just the word itself.
My screen show you that the first iteration is not always the iteration that you see. So my first iteration of this was this bird, but then you can always take these ideas, and as the example shows, you can get a more fine-tuned project from that.
Yeah, in the same vein, I am also like, I like drawing, painting, and things like that. This activity is one of those things that are really hard for me to do. Thank you everyone who came. Like Mike said, we super appreciate you all taking time out of your day to come and spend time with us and do goofy creative things.